This will be part 3 of my Outlander Season 7, Episode 13 review. As always, if you are looking to avoid spoilers from the books or the show, please do keep on scrolling. So after Buck and Roger go into the woods in search of Jerry Mackenzie, we cut back to Rachel and Ian on their wedding night. This whole scene is almost verbatim out of the books. Every moment, every little dialogue that they share with each other is very much taken directly from the text. In the text, they have a excerpt talking about Denny and Dottie's wedding night, followed by Rachel and Ian, and then they cut to Jamie and Claire. So now, so far this season, we have had William and Jane, who I sadly wish that we got a little bit of William in this episode, but we didn't. And now we have Rachel and Ian. From there, we cut to Claire and Jamie in Lord John's bed, which I couldn't get over this. So naturally, they're laying in his bed, and Jamie is thinking about Lord John yet again. I think the way that they're choosing to deal with the aftermath of Claire and Lord John is so interesting, because I think there's so many different ways that they could have done this, but I think the overarching impression that is being left, I should say, on show viewers is that Jamie is just being like a bitter man about this, whereas in the books, obviously, you have the advantage, because it's a different medium, of letting the reader marinate with this via Jamie's internal thoughts about it going on, and how he kind of splices his thoughts about this throughout his events in the story. But I don't know if I love how they're handling this. Jamie also brings up William, and like I said, I do wish they showed him in some capacity in this episode, but Claire points out to Jamie that she thinks that William and him have far more in common than Jamie realizes, because she's observed William for a while now as an adult. And again, in the books, they spend a lot more time together, Claire and William, and become quite close with one another. So that statement from her carries a little more weight, because you have seen how they've interacted and spent so much time together, but they haven't so much in the show. And it just comes across as ironic that she tells Jamie that William is like Jamie, and she believes that William will come around to this because Jamie will. And how ironic that is, given the situation that Jamie is laying in this bed, still holding a grudge against Lord John in the very same scene. When we do finally see Lord John, we can see that he had been sleeping in the woods and is discovered by a group of soldiers who came upon him and wake him up and ask, "Who are you?" And Lord John is very quick on his feet, and so he gives them his middle names to pretend that he is on their side of the fight. And so he goes by Bertram Armstrong at this point and plays the card of being captured by the British and accused of being a spy. And in this interaction, he meets Reverend Peleg Woodsworth, who basically takes him in as an escaped prisoner. And in the story, in the books, which I suspect we will see in the next episode, he inducts him into the American militia. So Lord John finds himself in a very precarious situation indeed. So this is the man who I think we will see more of in the next episode, as Lord John basically signs on to be a member of the American militia by accident as a means of survival at this point. Then we're back at Lallybroch, where Bree and the kids are coming home alongside the police and expecting to find Rob Cameron there, where they will be able to arrest him for kidnapping Jemmy. But when they get inside and the police knock on the priest hole, he's gone. And again, the way that the priest hole is depicted in the show doesn't do it any favors, because in the books, it's like a very, very deep, almost like an 11-foot deep literal hole in the house that has no way of climbing in or out of it. It's nearly impossible to escape from, whereas in the show it looks like a closet with a wood door and a flimsy lock on it. Obviously, he is a big man. He would theoretically be able to escape from that potentially, so that doesn't do the show any favors. But then on top of that, as I mentioned previously, when we are reading the scene with Jemmy escaping from the dam, he is being chased and followed, and when Bree takes him away, he at the time was being chased by men, and so they can infer from that Rob Cameron is not working alone. And then when they get home and Rob is not there, they can also infer that the people he is working with came and helped get him out of the priest hole and helped him to escape at that point. Bree is trying to discuss this with the police, and this is a sensitive topic for her because she can't reveal the motivation behind Rob Cameron's actions without giving up the whole time traveler plot that she knows no one would believe. But there's also higher stakes in the book because by this point, Bree has read a letter from Frank Randall warning her that something like this might happen because of the Fraser prophecy, and all of the research that he has done into this points him to believing that Bree would be someone that the conspiracy theorist crazies might be going after at some point in her life. And this is a much bigger storyline that I can't tell if they're just omitting it from the show or maybe we'll handle it later on differently. I really hope they include it though, because it's so fascinating. But as simply put as I can make it, go watch my Fraser prophecy video. I think that will help. But also, it's important to note that in that letter, in Written in My Own Heart's Blood, Frank essentially reveals to Bree that when he was researching Jamie Fraser, he learned a lot about the lineage of the Fraser line, and he suspected that Bree might be someone who could travel back in time as well. And so he would take her shooting and taught her all of these skills in the event that she would have to go back there to hide, go back in time to hide, that she would be equipped to live at that time. And so you end up reading this letter from Frank and learning that so much of what he did with Bree as a child was in preparation for her potentially having to go back into the past at some point in her life because of this Fraser prophecy and the fear that she would be a wanted person by the people who buy into this prophecy. Now, obviously, she can't reveal that because if there are people around who believe in it, it would put her and her family in even greater danger. But also, I don't think she believes that the police would be willing to help her. And we see here that they are accusing her of engaging in an affair with Rob Cameron because Roger at this point is nowhere to be found. And so she plays this card as though he's in Boston, which again, I don't know if the show's going to handle it, but Bree and the children do fly to America at one point to Boston. So it's like a very tactical lie that she tells. Very curious to see where the show goes with this storyline because it was one of my favorites if handled properly. And I just don't have faith that the show's even going to touch it at this point because it would have been brought up by now, I think. Then we cut to my second favorite part of this book, which is the storyline with Jerry Mackenzie and Roger and Buck finally meeting him for the first time. And I personally am very happy with this casting for Jerry because I think that there is a very good resemblance between him and Roger. And I think that also makes their interactions more fun because it does seem like you're watching, a mirror image of Roger in many ways. Jerry is immediately wary of these men approaching him because he has been getting chased lately, and Roger shows him his dog tags and reveals to him that he is from the future, starts sharing some historical events with him. And can you just imagine being Jerry for a second and having this man from your future show up in the past to talk to you? It's just a mind warp. And I also just love how Roger interacts with him under the guise of being a friend, and doesn't want to reveal who he actually is to Jerry at this point for a multitude of reasons. I would highly recommend, and it's one of my favorite novellas, is reading A Wind on the Leaf of All Hallows, which is the story of Roger's parents. I think that is such a great novella to read, especially since we're at that point now in the show that if you haven't read the books, you could easily read the novella and would understand what was happening. But Roger doesn't want to reveal who he is to Jerry because he doesn't know if it will affect time, and especially where Roger never knew his father. The chance that it could affect his future so greatly is not one that he's willing to take. So in the books, you really get to feel that push-pull within Roger of whether or not to say anything to this man that he's wanted to meet his whole life. And it does break your heart, but it's one of the best storylines, I think, in the books. So we'll talk about it more in part 4.